So if you've listened to me before, you've probably heard me say this phrase, that the transfer portal giveth, but the transfer portal also taketh away. And today, we need to talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide having another player test the waters of the transfer portal, but this time from a position group that we have a lot of intrigue around, and that's that offensive line. And with that, we're going to be taking a look at Dayne Shor entering the transfer portal and what it means for the Alabama Crimson Tide. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Are you surprised that Shor has entered the transfer portal? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. We're on our push to 15,000 subscribers, and I'd love to have you a part of this awesome community. And if you enjoyed this content, like and comment down below. Those interactions seem small. They are huge for content creators such as myself. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And I'll start by saying, in my opinion, this isn't super surprising. And let me explain further. Because at the point where Alabama has been so successful in getting in players from the transfer portal, and they got in an offensive tackle that they're very excited about, at that point where you're able to acquire an offensive tackle that there's excitement about, it only seems logical that someone from that room will probably make an exit. First and foremost, there's only so many jobs available, and Alabama's offensive line, though one that we have questions about, we need to remember, Tyler Steen being introduced into the equation should theoretically solve some of those questions. And in theory, when you mix Tyler Steen plus getting the rest of the offensive line healthy, you're starting to build the foundation of what could be a successful offensive line. Now, things still have to come to fruition. The work has to be put in. I'm just saying, from a theoretical standpoint, we can look at this and see how some of these questions are already being answered by the addition of a Tyler Steen and by getting guys healthy. Guys have got to step up. Guys have got to play up to their potential, but inevitably the foundation is there. And when you have that foundation, it's only logical that someone who may not be about to crack that will look elsewhere. And in this case, it's former three-star prospect Dayne Shor. And Dayne Shor is an intriguing prospect. Coming from Georgia, he spent some time at IMG, but wasn't able to really put everything together because of an injury. And so because of that, this is a prospect that I think many people will be interested in. I talked the other day about offensive linemen in the transfer portal and how after spring, all of these institutions are really taking a holistic look at not only what they need, but these players are taking a holistic look on where they sit on the depth chart. And offensive line is such an important position in football that I'm never surprised when offensive linemen don't sit in the transfer portal long or are sitting in the transfer portal for a long time weighing their options because they've been courted by so many institutions. So it's going to be interesting to see where Dayne Shor goes. This is going to be a situation we have to watch, but for the Crimson Tide, if we break this down and what it means for them, while I'm not surprised, this does mean there is a vacancy in the depth department, and one of these younger guys is going to have to step up. Now, the flip side of that coin is by making one of these younger guys step up, you're inevitably putting a greater opportunity for them to continue developing into the player that you have faith in, and that is a net positive. And another thing we have to remember is there are still some very talented pieces coming to help the Crimson Tide's offensive line that won't be here until the summer. Now, I always talk about this with offensive line, and so this time is going to be no different. I'm never surprised when those guys don't start as a true freshman. The jump from high school football to college football is monumental, but the jump from high school offensive line to college offensive line is massive. I've said this in a live stream, I'm going to say it here. When you're at the high school level, there is no baseline in athleticism, and what I mean when I say that, you could be a 4 or 5-star offensive lineman, and on any given Friday night, you're lined up against somebody that might be 5'11", 6 foot, an unrated prospect, and a guy who's never going to play a down of collegiate football. He's just there because he likes hanging out with his friends and playing the game of football. You could be putting that on tape, and when you dominate him, that's awesome, but that's not indicative of how talented you are because you're not truly being pushed to your limit. When you get to college, there's at least a baseline athleticism. A lot of the guys that are starting across from you are guys that weren't only the best player on their team, in a lot of circumstances, they were the best player from their town. And so the parameters around this completely flip. And so when you are a position like offensive line, the difference in size, speed, strength, and technique required is astronomical. And it's never surprising when it takes these guys a year or two in the system to get their bodies right, to understand the technique required, and then to learn the complex systems that a lot of these colleges are asking these offensive linemen to carry out. Having said all of that though, Alabama has a lot of talented pieces coming in this summer to provide necessary depth. And when we look at the Alabama offensive line holistically, though we have questions, some of those questions have already theoretically began to be answered, with guys getting healthy and with Tyler Steen introducing himself into the equation. Now, positions still need to develop, but that's why this situation as a whole is so interesting, and I'm so interested in hearing from you. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking, not only about Dayne Shor entering the transfer portal, let me know what you're thinking about Alabama's offensive line. Do you have concerns about it? Do you have questions about it? And just let me know how you're feeling. That's it. See ya.